This is the iPhone 15 Plus, and it launched back in September of 2023. And in this episode, I want to talk about my updated thoughts 1 year later with a review on the iPhone 15 Plus. So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. And I've had the 15 Plus since a little bit after launch day. I think I got this one about 2 weeks after. I'm gonna do a similar thing this year. I'm gonna cover the Max first, the base, and we'll cover the 16 Plus later. But this one came with a pretty nice box. You can see this you kind of feel the phone on the front of the box. This one was I think it was a 256 gig model. They actually did not have the 15 Plus at 128 when I went to pick it up. Because they were selling pretty good at first when they first launched. And you could see inside the box we have the 15 Plus. It just came with a braided USB-C cable and some warranty stickers and guides. So we didn't really get a charger, anything of that sort, and a pretty minimal box setup. Now this phone came in nice colors, including the black. It came with a blue, a green, a yellow, and a pink. And all of those phones had matching wallpapers to go with it. But the price point of this phone was around $899 or $999 if you want to go up to a higher storage, which I had to go up to. All in all, with taxes in most areas, this phone's about $1,000 or so, maybe a little bit more depending on the storage. So it's pretty up there. And for just like 100 or 200 more, you could just go with a Pro Max, or you can go with last year's Pro Max for cheaper than this one. So if you dig into the research of the prices, it could be a tough sell for some people. But for those of you who wanted a first-time dynamic island, a large screen, and you didn't want to go all out for the Max, or maybe you wanted a matte black color option or a lighter body, this is definitely a really, really nice option or a pick for you. But price for value, I think it was a little bit overpriced, and definitely I like to see this more around like $799, $850 instead of like $899, $999. To me, that's a little bit overpriced for what this phone offers, but we'll talk more about this as we go on in this review. All right, so let's talk about the design in the body. So this one kind of got the iPhone 14 Pro Max's dynamic island front look overall. So 14 Pro series and 14 Pro Max brought the dynamic island, and from the front, nobody would know this is a 15 or 14 Pro. They just wouldn't know. It's got that same look. So that was nice. Also, there's a smoother texture on the back, and the edges feel smoother to hold. This phone was also lighter than the iPhone 15 Pro Max. 201 grams, which in simple talk is pretty light for a large iPhone. So one of the best things about this has just been the way it feels in the hand. It's smooth, it's thin, it's light. Well, probably not as thin as what we're going to see with the iPhone 17 Air, which is rumored to come next year. Definitely a very thin and light affair. If you use a thin case on this, this also is pretty comfortable to hold. So overall, in the dynamic island, along with the diagonal camera here, which now, because they're rumored to go to a vertical camera, will look like last year's phone, which is something Apple typically does. They got to find some little tweak to make your phone look like it's last year's phone. But you'll see right here, pretty clean setup. I do like how it's like shiny in there and then matte here. Kind of matches the glass on the front being glossy and stuff like that. So that's kind of a nice look. Overall, I definitely like the look of this one. It's a clean, classy looking iPhone, and it definitely is nice to hold. It's also pretty durable with an IP68 dust and water resistant rating. So definitely can withstand some dust, withstand some water, and you can get on your way. Overall though, definitely quite nice. You can see silent switch doesn't give it its action button. And again, they're rumored to go to the action button on all the iPhones now. So this is definitely going to feel like an older feature once again. Volume markers in the same place. And we do have ourselves power button over here, 5G antenna up at the top, pretty smooth. Generally, it's just a flat black, smooth, premium looking iPhone. And the other colors are also quite nice, but some of them are a little bit more pastel. But a year later, I'm talking about this whole body and build. It's been excellent. Really definitely liked it. Although this is a glass back, even though it feels nice and matte, you can still crack this thing pretty easily if you hit it on the right corner. So I definitely recommended a case for the 15 Plus. When we move it on the display here, let's take a look at this LG OLED sample. You can see right here, very vivid colors here, reproducing a very deep blacks, very nice contrast ratio. This isn't super Retina XDR OLED panel. Basically, it's Apple's marketing for a really nice OLED panel, HDR10 Plus support. This also has 1,000 nits of usable brightness and 2,000 nits outdoors. So even though this is not their top of the line phone, it has basically the top of the line display without ProMotion. But definitely it's a pretty nice aspect ratio, 19:9, which in layman's terms just means it's got nice width here without having super tall, without being overly wide. It's kind of a nice sweet spot for a smartphone. You can see plenty of content, you can type easily, and you also have a nice area for viewing video. So it's pretty much the sweet spot, I would say, for the aspect ratio. Also, 6.7 inches means this phone's display is not quite as large as some of the new competitors coming out at 6.8 to 6.9. Even Apple's upcoming 16 models might get a larger panel. This also doesn't have their most thin bezels out here, but no one's really going to notice nor likely care about this either. But I do want to point it out. It's not their thinnest bezels out there. Just something to point out. But overall, this display is basically top of the line without ProMotion. That's how I could sum it up. A year later, I could not get myself to switch to it though. I just couldn't use this phone as my main simply because of ProMotion. But I also am very aware that not everyone cares about that. And a lot of people that aren't into tech don't even notice that. If you really analyze, research, and care a lot about technology, though, I think the majority of tech fans are people who pay attention to what they're purchasing and do a lot of research about the top of the line specs, like me and you, most of us tech fans out there. You'll definitely probably not want this anymore. It's not that it's bad. It's just that there's pretty much 120 hertz, 90 hertz on basically every competitor on planet Earth right now, including budget phones like a Google Pixel 8a. So it just makes no sense why this phone does not have a 120 hertz at this point. Really, Apple needs to go to this on the 16 Plus, but I don't see it happening. It's probably not coming to the 17 models where every phone will get ProMotion. They're really dragging their feet on this one, and it's pretty annoying, especially when you're paying $1,000 for this. And even if you don't know about this feature or don't really care about it, it still doesn't mean that they shouldn't put it. I still feel like they should just put it anyway, just so everyone can benefit, even if they don't really pay attention to it too much. It's not that big of a deal. Most manufacturers are putting it on pretty much all their phones in the lineup. So when talking about software, I'm on iOS 17.6.1 here. A year later, it started out with a few bugs here and there. It's gotten better. Battery life has gotten better on this phone as well. And I haven't ran the beta on this one particularly because I've been running on the Pro, I've been running on the 15 Pro Max as well as the base. I think I ran it on the base 15 as well. But beta has been running pretty good lately. However, we're about a couple weeks away from getting the official beta, maybe even next week actually. So maybe not even a couple weeks. But the software is, it's iOS. You can move icons around wherever you want in the new iOS 18 beta. This won't be getting the official AI, though, for this phone. So you're going to have to use apps if you want to use AI like ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, and the list goes on of the tons of AI apps that are available. But those are not on-device AI, which is coming to everything from the 15 Pro to the 15 Pro Max. And for me, that just feels super ridiculous. Let's say you went into the Apple store a few months ago and you bought an iPhone 15 Plus. You're already not getting the latest software, but they got your $1,000. So for me, this is super annoying. And I know the excuse is that it's 6 gigs of RAM. It might not run it too well, but why couldn't we just make a lighter version of it, or maybe tone it down a bit, some of the features, and don't give all the more demanding features to the iPhone 15 Plus and 15. They could have did something, maybe to give us some AI on device. It's just a little bit annoying because I just dropped over $1,000 on this phone less than a year ago, and I'm already out of date. Unbelievable. So I'm not very a fan of that. But at the same time, it doesn't make me dislike the phone. But that's one of the software cons of this device. You still have app library, you still have nice widgets, you still have the clean iOS ecosystem with all the apps. But it doesn't feel like it's going to be a very smart smartphone just because it's not getting that feature. And some people want to call it gimmicky, but whether you use it or not, you should still be able to have the option to do so when everybody else on the market is getting it. That's just how I feel. If someone else is buying a phone at the same price you're paying for your phone, whether you want it turned on or not, it should be an option if you ask me. And moving on to an area that I'm pretty happy with this phone is performance. This phone has an A16 Bionic, which is a super fast chip found in the iPhone 14 Pro Max. 6 gigs of RAM, runs iOS just fine. Even though some phones are going to 16 gigs of RAM these days, that does make it feel a little bit different. And it definitely has just a little bit more power than you would expect for this price, and especially in the gaming, video editing. And even though this doesn't have tons of RAM, like I just mentioned, it can still hold apps pretty well in the background without too many massive reloads. Definitely a pretty nice performer for this phone, especially the CPU. It's such a powerful CPU, just going to be held back, I think, long term by the RAM, especially when you really push these phones. But overall, it's a great performer. This is just not an area of a problem today. I do think the AI with the RAM in the future, but this is not getting it, is something to think about. And maybe that is a consideration why they didn't put it here, is because they don't want this phone to have any performance issues down the line. But still, like, it makes this phone seem kind of irrelevant as we go into the future. That's just my problem right there. So this might be the shortest software supported iPhone in history. The 15 and 15 Plus come out and AI comes out. No, thank you for you. You're not getting a 15, 15 Plus. And I know it's like I keep talking about this point, but it's just weird because usually we're used to buying an Apple iPhone and being like, yo, I've had the iPhone for 5 years. I've had it for 6 years. I still have updates. What about you? Do you still have updates? And the person not using that iPhone probably doesn't have software support anymore. But this one getting the software support, but I would say not a crippled version, but a lesser version, because you don't get Apple Intelligence. Further touching on the point of performance, the 120 hertz performance experience is definitely noticeable when you compare it side by side. However, I did do a test run with this phone where I used it as my main phone for about a month, and it definitely, I kind of forgot about it. I definitely did. But then when I went back to my Pro, I was like, whoa, this is way smoother, way smoother. So you can say I forget about it, that's fine, but that doesn't erase the fact that there's a phone out there cheaper than this. It's called the 14 Pro Max that has a smoother panel, one that maybe costs 100 or 200 more that has a way smoother panel called the 15 Pro Max. It's just weird. I just want 120 hertz on all these panels, and it definitely takes away from the performance experience for the money. If this phone was like $400 cheaper, I would be like, whatever. But this phone is not $400 cheaper. It's only like $100 cheaper, and it's a much less smooth display by comparison. But again, I think for the average person buying this, if they just wanted a slightly cheaper price and they just want iPhone, they want that branded phone, they probably don't care. Honestly, they probably don't. So when I say that, this is my review. This is what I think about it. You know, some, if not many, who bought this probably don't give a hoot about that. Let me know your thoughts on that down below. I'm talking about the battery life on here. When you enable low power mode, because this one doesn't have a 120 hertz panel, you could enable low power mode. It doesn't switch and become 60 hertz like it does on the Pro model. So you can have that on a lot. This phone was one of the longest lasting, if not the longest lasting iPhones I've ever seen. This thing outlasted the 15 Pro Max. It outlasted my 15. And the battery life has gotten better over time as well. The thing just really shocked me at how well it did. With a 4383 milliamp hour battery on board, this phone also did have not the fastest charging, only 15 watts right there. So not super quick right there, but it could charge 50% in 30 minutes. So that's pretty good. This phone just saw decent battery life. While not the largest, there's phones that are outdoing this now. It's one of the best, if not the best, in the 15 lineup. So if you want a strong battery, this is the one right here to consider, especially if you're looking for a yesteryear iPhone. But the next upcoming 16 models next week are going to probably blow this away, especially the larger ones, because I think they're going to go larger battery or definitely increase the battery. They know this is an area they got to improve. And so this would probably be one of the better yesteryear options in just a week here. One thing I absolutely love on this phone is the camera setup. I love how they improved it to a 2x zoom, even though it's not an optical. You can go 2x, you can go all the way up to 10 times right here. So very nice. They're basically cropping it on the 48 megapixel sensor right there. And you can see you can go ultra wide as well. You can do some macros on that ultra wide shot. While not dedicated macro mode, you could just go ahead and go ultra wide and get some macro shots. plenty of zoom. This is basically the standard of what you need. So for me, I think this is enough camera for almost every single user out there. And then I'm going on the front camera, 4K 60, also enough with really good social media quality, really good front-facing video quality. This phone right here is everything you need for an iPhone camera, whereas the other ones are for pros. There really are those extra lenses, that extra reach, that extra raw stuff. That is if you're going to use those tools. This is definitely the best, I think, for just kind of consumers. This is what consumers need. They need some zoom, 10 times as good. They need 4K 60 for doing their videos in high quality for their social channels. Perfect for that. This is just great. Ultra wide cinematic modes, and you could play around with some manual camera apps, some stuff on the market, on the App Store, and be just fine. So this is definitely an amazing option for the camera, for sure. In the showcase of some of what I'm talking about, you can see incredible detail on this flower right here. I'm able to pick up great detail across the board in pretty much any camera sample I do here. Let's go ahead and get a little bit more. You can see just great color reproduction. Even when I zoom in, very, very good detail here on these leaves or clovers, whatever these things are. But definitely you could see in the chlorophyll, you could see, just look at this. Look at that detail right there. So incredible quality. Let's go ahead and move it over here. You can see, you can even get in on some good quality right here. Look at the text. Look at the text on the wall, EDU. You see the text on the wall? Just incredible right there. So thumbs up for the camera and the results it does produce. So emergency SOS features. USB-C was also a really good feature here. This one drops the SIM card. I don't think the 14 Plus had SIM card either. It's eSIM business, so that's not great here. Audio performance, pretty loud. Not as good as the Max, but definitely pretty darn good. I quite like the audio performance on this phone. And I do want to discuss quickly my thoughts on the storage. I think the storage is not a good value on this phone because it just costs quite a bit to go up in the storage, but that's kind of like across the lineup in the iPhone. So definitely I would probably go 256 gig minimum if you want to keep this phone a long time, as you will be paying for iCloud storage in droves if you don't get a higher storage capacity. But definitely this is not my favorite for the price for the storage, but it does have, at least it does have fast Apple storage because they do use NVMe storage on here. So it's very quick, and AirDrop with other Apple ecosystem products does work very good as well. We're talking about a phone after all, and the phone call quality and reception was actually surprisingly good for the 15 Plus, pretty similar to what I said about the 15 Pro Max, whereas I didn't have too many issues. I will say I did struggle a little bit though in enclosed areas, as you will with most phones, but I found on my Samsung devices and even a couple of my other Android phones, I was getting a little bit better signal strength in garages or enclosed areas than my iPhone 15 series models, including the 15 Plus. So watch out for that. And also in some more rural outside of the urban areas, I did have a little bit less bars than I would like. I had like one or two. So that was a little bit spotty there, but for the most part, when you're in just the city or in your main areas where you got towers and all that, pretty good. I was in 5 bars most of the time, in indoors and out and about for the most part. Just those fringe areas and those few little minor dead spots. I did find a little bit better strength on some of my other phones in those dead spots than this one. So that's just something I wanted to point out. I am using T-Mobile. It might be my carrier. Let me know which carrier you're using if you have the same experience or something different. So for a final conclusion, who would I recommend the iPhone 15 Plus to? Well, I wouldn't recommend it to an iPhone fan who wants the latest and greatest tech specs. I just wouldn't do that. It's just not the latest and greatest. They launched this last year with 2022 processor on board and a iPhone 12 Pro Max like display with 60 hertz, which they upgraded to 120 hertz with the 13 Pro Max. So there are trades and pros and cons of this one. You get a modern iPhone design with lesser specs. It reminds me of those like cars that have like base model features, but they're still the newer car. You still get the newer car, but this has lesser features. You could just get an older car with all the features, higher trim for less money, but it is used. That's kind of what we have here. We have a base model large iPhone. Good example would be like, okay, let's say you're going to shop a a Tahoe or something. You get the LT or the lower model. I don't even know what it's called. Then you get the Premier or LTZ or whatever the model is. For that model, you're going to get more features. That's kind of like how it is here with this phone right here. You get the base. You still get it's still a nice phone, but it's the base. So if you don't care about that and you still want the Apple phone, you need the Apple apps, the Apple ecosystem, Apple branding. That's all you need to know. You're going to be pretty happy here. 1 year later, though, is it a good recommend use? I think so. I think it's going to be a good pickup, especially as the price comes down. It's going to be an awesome device for those of you finally getting this for $650, $600. That's a good deal for this phone, definitely, for sure, because it's got like most of what you need, and it's coming in at half the price. That'll definitely be a pretty good deal. So that's going to wrap it up here for me 1 year later with the iPhone 15 Plus. If you want to see any of my 1 year later reviews before the iPhone 16 models come on the other 15 models, let me know down below in the comment section of this video. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you all in the very next episode. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.